Thank you for taking time out with PSOA. Sean Johnston here from Omaha, Nebraska. And we have a special guest here today, Tim Arndt from Bellevue, Nebraska. Just got done working a state championship here, and we're going to spend some time asking him a few questions. But, Tim, if you want to introduce yourself and sort of give your resume as a high school football official here in the state of Nebraska.
Tim Arndt, 58 years old. I've been officiating high school football for the NSAA 16 plus years. Um, I think some of the early years probably didn't show registration because I was doing a bunch of sub-varsity stuff. But as a varsity official, 16 years. Um, uh, Played college football, coached football, high school football for a number of years. When I finished coaching football, I wanted to stay close to the game, so I started officiating. Started at the youth level like everybody else. Went to camps, found good mentors. It worked my way up through high school. Started working sub varsity for a number of years. Learned all the spots on the field, so I worked every position sub varsity. When I got to the varsity level, I worked primarily on the line, so I was either head linesman or line judge for most of that time. Um, and then when I worked in the Metro, and I was on a crew that was lucky enough to do a state championship, and then Sean Johnston, who you all know, who's been a good friend of mine through multiple sports, asked me to come over to PSOA to be a head referee, and I was glad to do that. So I was able to become head referee. So for the last, oh God, Sean, how's it been now? 6 years, maybe
Yeah, that
five or
sounds
six.
about right. Yep.
I think 5 or 6 years now with PSOA. We've been out of the Metro, so um, it's worked out. I couldn't ask for a better career doing football. So
You know,
um,
you talk about a career, and I know I'm going to do everything I can to prevent you from retiring full time. But taking a look back at that 16-year career plus, you know, would you do it again 20 years ago
um,
when you started? Why or why not?
honestly, I thought about this, and honestly, I wish I would have. Well, the reason I started later, I started a lot later than a lot of these young guys now because I was coaching for so long. And then I was an administrator for a while because I'm still in education, and that kind of took me away from it at that time. And then when I got out of the administrative role, I wanted to get back into football, so officiating was the best way to go. Honestly, if I had to do it all over again, I probably would have maybe started earlier, and maybe followed more of a career in college football officiating. It just didn't work out that way. But if I had to do it all over again, that's probably the path I would have tried to maybe go to the next level. But I don't regret the way it ended, actually how it went the whole time. I would definitely do it again. Hindsight, if I was younger. But I mean, we'll talk about a little bit later. But the resources were different when I started compared to the resources these young officials have today. So it's a little bit different time.
Yeah, and you don't know how many times in my position I hear exactly those words you said. I wish I started sooner, and if I started sooner, I would have gave college a chance at it. So those officials listening to this video, if you're going back and forth, do I start now? Do I start next year? Start right now. Get involved, get your feet wet, and start the process. And looking back now, what are you going to remember the most as a football official in your career?
When you do football, you're with the same five guys a lot of time, and I think that what you remember the most is just working with different guys over the years, the times in the locker room, the pre games, those Friday night road trips, whether you're going somewhere in the metro or if you're going to Norfolk or whatever contest you're doing, just those drives there and two, and you talk a little bit more about life and things like that, and family, more than just football because it's such a camaraderie with the guys, and you get to know everybody's kids and their wives and all that kind of stuff is pretty cool. Um, you remember the big games you did. I mean, I don't want to minimize anything we officiate, but you remember the big contests, the big matchups, the ones that came down to the wire, those types of games. And luckily for me, I've done a couple championships, so you obviously remember those games. They're very vivid in your mind, even though my last one was, I don't know, 6 years ago, whatever it was. And I truly love the interaction with coaches and players. Um, I was lucky to end my career in a couple of seasons working with my son. That was always a goal of mine when he got old enough to get into officiating, and Sean was instrumental in that because that was one of the reasons why I wanted to run a crew and have my son on that crew. And we were lucky to work a couple seasons together. And then, of course, it ends with working a state final with your son. I mean, it just doesn't get better than that. So those are some of the main points I would remember. I mean, I'm sure there's many more, but it's hard to think of all of them over that long of a career in officiating. So
And I will say, when I go out and talk to young sports officials at schools, I tell them one of the things that I never would ever think I would get out of sports officiating is friendship and the camaraderie that is made within the community. You do. You join a new family, and it's even tighter in football. You know, we're talking about football here, but you also have worked basketball in the past. You currently work baseball. You worked the NEI World Series last year in baseball. How has football officiating helped those other sports, and vice versa? How has foot or baseball and basketball officiating helped your success as a football official?
well, I know a lot of guys will do one sport. Most of the guys that Sean and I know do multiple sports, and I did three for a long time, two at the high school level, and then one at the high school and college level. I did basketball for a number of years also. I just actually stopped doing that just a couple of winters ago. Um, there's some main points I think officiating multiple sports is very advantageous. Competition is a big one, I think. Being involved in as much competition as you possibly can put yourself into allows more experiences, how to handle situations yourself, players, coaches. Um, the more sports you involve yourself in also slows the game down for a little bit for officials. I can remember my first varsity basketball game. Of course, back then it was still only two man, and the game was so fast. I didn't know if I was coming or going, and I just felt like, oh my God, can I even officiate this level? These kids are fast. I don't. I was in the moment. It was very very fast for me. So, um, but the more and more you work, you start getting games under your belt. Three sports allows the game to slow down a little bit. Becomes You become a much better official when the game's just slower for you, and you're just a better official. Um, and then at the beginning, I did as many games as I could in all three sports, um, so I could just be better at each sport and better at handling whatever came to me. I Game management was another big one for me. Working three games, working multiple sports, you learn a little bit more about game management. Understand how to deal with coaches and players, like I kind of mentioned. How to handle conflict resolution, which is a big thing in sports. You make calls. Some One coach likes it, one coach doesn't. You got to go over and talk to that coach. You have multiple penalties in football. You got to explain options. Coaches are very excited. They're very intense people. So you got conflict resolution's big. Um, we're all good at calling fouls or outs and safes and strikes and balls and all that kind of stuff. But how do we handle the aftermath? How do we communicate with everyone involved? What separates the good officials from the average official, in my opinion? Good officials make correct calls, and the old saying is unpopular calls. But in all actuality, Making any correct call in any tight situation is not going to be popular, but you have to make the right call. And it's how you handle yourself in that situation is what makes a difference between a really good official and an average official. And then the other thing I was thinking about it was partners. You I tried to work with as many different partners as possible in all three sports. And I always made sure that I worked with officials that I felt were better than me. In the beginning, I probably wasn't very good. I mean, I was good enough to call games and stuff, but I always worked with better officials. I knew they were better than me, so I could learn from them what to do, and in some cases, what not to do. So that was a big thing, and you develop those long life friendships, and those are paramount. When others find out I was working, I just give you an example. When people found out that I was going to work a final, and I was the head referee for this final, I was getting text messages from guys that I have not worked with or seen for 10 years, out of the blue. Just congratulations, proud of you, good luck, things like that. So that just goes to show that you made really good friendships. They were long lasting. And those guys didn't have to reach out, and they did. So that just shows the officiating network that you develop throughout the multiple years you do multiple sports. And to put it all in perspective, I just think you're a better official if you officiate more than one sport.
Yeah, it's sort of like you take a look at the best Division One athletes. You look back at their high school career.
Yeah,
Most of
good
them
point.
played multiple sports, and it's how to be a good teammate, how to play different roles. Yeah, you have your best sport, but when you learn how to do different roles, you become part of that team, and when you're part of that team, you just have natural success. You're building skills without you even knowing it. Looking at this picture, you got your son, who's a young official. You got Eric Nielsen, who's a young official, Bryce Kirkman, who's a young official, and then John Benson is around you with a veteran official. You know, New officials watching this, they get started in officiating, they want success right away. They want to know they're doing a good job and are adequate to do the job. What advice would you give new officials of what they could do to have early success as you have three on your crew that are young and they have early success?
Yeah, and the thing about the three young guys on the crew, and they are really young. But Eric was with me the longest, the back judge. They're also excellent officials. I mean, they did things right at a young age that it probably took me a few more years to really get a handle on. But if I'm talking young, new officials in football, work hard at your craft, understand the rules, get in the rule books, get in the mechanic books, listen to others that are trying to help you at all times. Take constructive criticism well because they're just trying to help you. And and I've always been kind of the official that if I do a game with you and you want input, I'm happy to give it to you. I wasn't always the guy that immediately gave input or feedback back. I I just wasn't that kind of guy, but I would definitely help you if you needed it. Um, Learn from others that are better than you. Work with people that are better than you. Those are the ones that have the experience, the knowledge, the understanding, how to handle situations. You got to go to camps and clinics. You have to. There's so much available out there now for camps and clinics. Um, Even what PSOA puts on, what the state puts on nationally, you can go to clinics. There's just ways you've got to be seen. Um, Stay in shape, look the part. I think those things are important. You know, Throughout my career, I worked out constantly. I never wanted to be that old slow guy out there. I wanted to be able to run with all the young guns and show that I still could. So I think it's important to stay in shape. There's a process to get games and work as many as you want to. Stay away from the negatives. Make good decisions off the field. Very important if you want to move up. You have to be You have to have just as good a character on the field as off the field. Don't make poor mistakes off the field. Um, you have so much more resources now than I ever had when I first started. You know, we didn't have film that we could just go look at game film of only yourself, but um, maybe the opponents that you're going to see on that Friday night. We didn't have huddle back then. We could just click a button and look at, okay, look at their tendencies, look at their running backs, what's their quarterback do. We didn't have that. You know, you just showed you knew about the athletes, but we couldn't sit and watch film that much. Um, the other thing we didn't have groups like PSOA back then that develop officials. That was non-existent. When I started, you basically you bought the equipment you needed. So you got your beanbag and your flag and whatever you needed. And then they're like, okay, you're ready. Here's your games. So go out and work. Um, so you were thrown on a field, and obviously I started at youth games. I think a little bit of advantage that I had is that I coached the game for a number of years and I played the game. But I will tell you this, even if you were a high school football player, there's a huge difference between coaching a sport and officiating a sport. Because I thought I knew a lot about football, and then as soon as I became an official, it was an eye opener. I realized that I didn't know as much as I thought I knew about the game, and it was a huge learning curve because being on the sideline yelling at officials and then being on the field and being an official and understanding why calls are made or positions they are in, and you're yelling about holding here or there that's 50 yards away, and then you're official and you know that that holding 50 yards away doesn't affect the play, even though, yeah, maybe somebody was getting held. So it was a huge learning curve going from a coach to official, but just the resources alone that young officials have, if they take advantage of that, they're going to be really good officials quickly and quickly.
You stated earlier this was your second state championship crew, so now you have a body of two. There's officials that have not had the opportunity to work a state championship yet, and that's one of their goals. What are the commonalities between your crew this year, your crew 6 years ago, that you could give to other crews of what they can do to put themselves in a position to be selected to work a state championship?
I thought about this when you gave me this question, and the crew I worked with in the Metro, really good crew, great guys. We were together for quite a few years. Um, we really weren't sure if we were going to get a final. It was always kind of back in the years ago. It was like if you worked a semi the year before, man, you were going to work a final the next year. That's not always the case, but in our situation, we were lucky. But to tell those guys out there now that have crews, there's some things you have to realize. You've got to work hard. You got to study film. You got to stay in shape. You need to be consistent with calls. You have to hustle at all times. Make sure every member of your crew is getting better at their position. Work on game management. If you're not very good at game management, work on game management. And you got to realize the work just doesn't begin in August. You know, you have to prepare yourself in the off season. That's why most of the clinics are in the off season. They're not during the season. Um, Even if you've been doing it for a number of years, you still need to go to clinics. You have to be seen. Evaluate your crew. A couple years ago, my crew, uh, I didn't feel was good enough to work a final. And it was a good crew. It really was. But I didn't feel we were good enough to work a final yet. Um, and then Sean and I got together and we kind of knew we needed to make some changes. And when I say that, it's not like we're saying this guy's bad, I got to get him off. That was not really the mindset. The mindset was, maybe this guy's goal maybe is he just loves working football, but his goal is not to go to the next level. And in my opinion, is postseason and then a championship. So we made some moves, and the crew got better, and it also made me realize that I need to be better. Maybe I'm the reason this crew isn't getting looked at um, in a bigger light. to work beyond a first round or a quarter. I needed to be better. So, I worked on getting better. Um, there's a difference between saying, I really want to work a final and asking yourself, what do I need to do to work a final? There's a big difference. Guys will be out there all the time. Oh, we've been doing this forever. Why aren't we working a final? Well, the question should be, what do we need to do to work a final? And there was something that Nate said in our meeting down at the stadium last Tuesday was um, there was 117 crews in the state of Nebraska that applied for postseason. 6 crews get picked to work the finals. So, you know, it's a small funnel when you get down to those 6 crews. Some guys always feel like they're not getting what would be considered high profile games. There's a reason for that. There's a reason you don't get the high profile games. And if you're not getting those, you need to look at your crew and figure out why you're not. Um, I can remember, and I'll flip over to another sport. I can remember when I first started working college baseball, and Sean would attest to this because Sean was one of the guys that was instrumental in me flipping over from high school to college. And I was a little frustrated. I was working a few years and I wasn't getting any postseason. And I felt that there were guys getting postseason that were not as good as me or the same. And and then I felt to myself, it's kind of selfish to think this guy's getting it, you're not. So I kind of self-realized that I just needed to be better. Needed to be better. Needed to go to more clinics, needed to work harder, perfect my craft. Needed to do more in the off season. And then with more experience, things started coming. Maybe you get a conference tournament, then you do a couple of those, then maybe you're conference crew chief, couple of those. Then all of a sudden you're working a regional, you're working a JUCO regional. Then you're crew chief for a regional. Then you work a few regionals. Then you're lucky enough to get selected with 7 other guys throughout the whole nation. You know, I was very fortunate to get selected for the NAI World Series. So, those are just some of the things that you have to do to make yourself better, make your crew better. And you've got to set goals for your crew. You've got to have goals. Our goal is to be better dead ball officiating or whatever it is, whatever we feel we need to be better at. So people go, oh, wait a minute. These guys are pretty good. Let me see their evaluations. These guys are real good. We need to really seriously consider looking at these guys. And then, and it takes time. You're not just going to get a final, right away. It just doesn't work that way. You've got to work hard. You got to be cohesive. And, it helps to have 3 college officials on your crew too. That doesn't hurt.
Yeah, so good, a lot of good stuff there. Surround yourself with successful people. Take advantage of the tools that are given to you. And probably the biggest takeaway is you have to be able to self reflect individually and as a crew of what can we do better. And then once you figure those parts out, it truly is a process. You're talking about baseball. It just didn't happen in one year. It's a body of work, and being noticed, getting out there, and because there's a comfort level too that is important from a coach's standpoint, from an administrator standpoint, and then from a crew standpoint. You have to be comfortable with your crew in a lot of situations. The only way you do that is through experience, and that's through years.
One other thing I might add, and I probably didn't say, is you've got to be approachable. You have to be approachable to players and coaches and things like that because whether you believe it or like it or whatever, coaches have input too. They have input. Um, we were lucky enough. We got an email this year from a coach. It was actually sent to Nate saying, "Hey, I don't know if you're looking at these guys, but you need to be." I mean, I knew we were on the radar, but and this is from a very, very good coach. And it was in a game that he lost that we did. And he said it was the best officiated game that he's had in several seasons by everybody. Very professional, very approachable, communicated well. You need to really look at these guys to work a state final. I don't know if that had any bearing on it, but those types of emails to the state don't hurt.
Yeah, I was gonna say it didn't hurt. I will say that.
It did not hurt.
I know as we exit this video here, you say you're giving up a football official here in the state of Nebraska. Hopefully, you still decide to register as a sub when I call you on a Friday night when we need a sub. But when you're not on a full crew, do you have any plans? You're talking about you're not that guy to go out and give feedback, but if people ask you for the feedback, you're willing to do it. What are your plans next year on Friday nights?
Um, Honestly, I really want to help new officials and I want to help crews. If crews, if they want me to come out and watch them, I would love to evaluate um, and go out and evaluate crews. Obviously, I'm not a state evaluator. I mean, that would be something I would be interested in. I don't know if I have the criteria for it. That would be something that Nate and all the administrators down there at the state, how they pick their evaluators. But um, there's nothing wrong with informal evaluations um, from a guy that's done it for a long time and worked a couple championships and worked with a lot of different crews and just kind of help them out a little bit. I would actually love to do that. I like helping young guys and older guys. It really doesn't really matter because age is no barrier. I'm 58. I can still get around. That's not really the issue. Um, it's time. My goal was to work a final, like I said before, with my son. That happened. My number of grandkids have grown now. So I need to go out and watch them play a little bit and spend some time with my grandkids. So Sean told me to adopt another son so I can keep going and have another goal for another championship with another son. But yeah, I don't think I have the patience to wait that long. So my oldest grandson is only 7, so I can't wait long enough for him to officiate. So, but it's been an incredible career. I've been around amazing people. Um, you young guys need to listen to Sean. He works tirelessly at what he does. He's a great official in every sport. He's super supportive. He was a main factor in um, 2 of my sports for sure, baseball at the college level and football at the high school level. I didn't work a lot of basketball for him, but enough to know. So just use the tools that are available and enjoy it. It's got to be fun too. If it gets to the point where you don't like being on a court or a diamond or a gridiron, then you probably shouldn't be doing it because you're not going to get rich off of it. Um, you're not in it for the money. You're in it for the competition and for the athletes and the coaches and the other number of guys, whatever sport it is, you're on the playing court field diamond that you're on. So, any other questions, Sean, you can think of?
No, that will do it for this time. But just some going away points. So, Tim, thank you for taking time out with us today. Next year, if the state does not use your willingness to observe officials, PSOA definitely will. So when that schedule's out, I'll send it to you. You get to pick the games you want to go to. And then maybe your adopted son will be mine when he turns 19 years old and gets into high school football officiating with me. Because the Lord knows you're
You'll
going
be
to be a
good
better
too.
coach. You'll be a better coach for him than myself. So.
I don't know about that.
All right, Tim. Thanks for taking time out today.
Yeah, I enjoyed
Officials
it.
here. Officials here. Remember, you're only as good as your last call.